I fired my son's nanny yesterday, certain she was a lazy opportunist. I had no idea I was tearing apart a universe my dead wife had painstakingly built, a mistake that would lead me to a truth I never could have imagined. I fired my son's nanny yesterday. I did it over the phone because I couldn't bear to look her in the eye, not because I was a coward, but because I was just so blindingly angry. The reason was simple: laziness, gross, unequivocal incompetence. For the salary I was paying Clara, I expected Mary Poppins. Instead, I got someone who seemed to treat her job as a paid opportunity to nap. To understand my anger, you have to understand my son, Leo. He's 7 years old, but he has the energy of a man 3 times his age. On a bad day. 2 years ago, a nasty virus swept through his system and left behind a devastating parting gift, a chronic condition that attacks his heart. He gets tired easily. His joints ache. Some days just getting out of bed is a marathon. My wife Sarah used to manage it all. She was his sun, his moon, and his stars. She knew when to push him, when to let him rest, and how to make a day spent entirely on the sofa feel like the world's greatest adventure. But I lost Sarah a year ago. A car accident. 1 minute she was here, the next she was just a gaping hole in our lives. Suddenly I was a single father and the CEO of a demanding tech startup, trying to care for a medically fragile child while grieving a loss so profound it felt like I was breathing water. I needed help. I needed more than a babysitter. I needed a surrogate angel. When I interviewed Clara, I thought I'd found her. She was in her late 50s, with kind, crinkling eyes and a voice as soft as a well-worn blanket. Her references were impeccable. She wasn't bubbly or energetic. She was calm, serene. I thought that was exactly what Leo needed. Someone to bring peace into our chaotic, broken home. For the first few weeks it seemed okay. Leo didn't complain. But then I started noticing things. I have security cameras in the main living areas, not to spy, but for Leo's safety, in case he has a medical emergency. I started checking the footage during my lunch breaks, and what I saw made my blood boil. More often than not, Clara was just sitting. She'd be on the couch, reading a book, while Leo was on his tablet beside her. The playroom, which I expected to be a hub of creative activity, often looked like a tornado had hit it, and was left that way for hours. Lunch was frequently just grilled cheese or microwave nuggets. There were no educational games, no carefully constructed craft projects, no gentle walks in the park I had suggested. I was paying a premium for what amounted to glorified house-sitting. The final straw came last week. I checked the cameras around 2 p.m. and saw them on the living room floor, surrounded by pillows and blankets. They weren't moving. At first, panic seized me. I almost called 911, but then I zoomed in. They were both just lying there, eyes closed, sleeping. In the middle of the day. They were supposed to be working on Leo's reading comprehension. Instead, they were napping. The mess from lunch was still on the coffee table. I let my anger simmer for a few days, gathering my evidence like a prosecutor. I saved screenshots from the camera feed. I made a list of her failures. When I called her yesterday, I was cold, clinical. I told her that her performance was unacceptable, that I felt she was taking advantage of my situation, and that her services were no longer required. I offered a generous severance package, 2 weeks' pay, because I'm not a monster. I just needed someone who would actually do the job. Clara was silent for a long moment on the other end of the line. I expected tears or arguments or excuses. I got none of that. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was quiet and heavy, with a sadness I couldn't quite place. "I understand, Mr. Davies," she said. "Just, please watch him. Really watch Leo. He needs you to see him." It was a strange, cryptic thing to say, and it irritated me even more. It sounded like a passive-aggressive jab at my parenting. Today was my first day as Leo's full-time caregiver again. I took the day off work, determined to show myself how it should be done. We were going to have a schedule. We'd do reading, then some math puzzles, a healthy lunch, followed by an art project. I was going to fix everything Clara had neglected. But Leo was having a bad day. He was pale and quiet, his movements slow and deliberate. He didn't want to do puzzles. He could barely focus on the book I was reading to him. After lunch, which he only picked at, he curled up on the couch with his tablet, his face etched with a familiar weariness that always twisted my heart. Defeated, I let him be. I decided to use the time to clean up the playroom, which was still a disaster from yesterday. As I was putting his building blocks away, I noticed his tablet lying on a cushion. He'd fallen asleep. Annoyance pricked at me. This was Clara's influence. Too much screen time, too much inactivity. I picked it up, intending to check his usage stats. But what I found wasn't a game or a video app. Open on the screen was a folder I'd never seen before. It was labeled Starship Logs. Curiosity got the better of me. I tapped it open. It was full of audio files. Dozens of them, each one named with a date. Stardate 47634.1. Stardate 47635.5. My brow furrowed in confusion. I clicked on the most recent file, dated yesterday afternoon, the exact time I had seen them napping on the camera. I pressed play, and a quiet hiss filled the room before a voice emerged. It was Clara's. "Captain Leo," she said, her voice a low, soothing whisper. "Mission report. Your energy levels are critical. The shields are failing. We need to divert all power to life support. Do you concur?" There was a pause, and then I heard my son's voice, faint and breathy, but clear. "I concur, Commander Clara, but the asteroid field. We didn't clean up the toys." My heart stopped. "The cleanup can wait, Captain," Clara's voice replied, full of a gentle, unwavering calm. "The mission was to successfully navigate the morning nebula. You did that. Now a great captain knows when his crew needs to rest. We're entering a regenerative sleep cycle. Go to sleep, my brave captain. I have the watch." I sank to the floor of the playroom, the tablet cold and heavy in my hands. The audio file ended, leaving only the sound of my own ragged breathing. I scrolled through the list of files, my fingers trembling. Stardate 47630.2. Stardate 47625.8. They went back months. Each one was a log, a report from the starship, my son's starship. I clicked on another one, from a day I specifically remembered being furious with Clara. I'd checked the cameras and seen them sitting at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, doing absolutely nothing. The plate from Leo's uneaten lunch was still in front of him. I had almost called her right then to demand what she was playing at. Now, I pressed play. "Commander Clara, reporting." Her voice came through the speaker, hushed. "The captain is refusing his fuel rations. Scanners indicate internal systems are unstable." There was a shuffling sound. "Captain," she prompted gently, "we need fuel to maintain orbit. Just a few bites." "It tastes like static, Commander," Leo's tiny voice mumbled. I remembered that day. He'd had a bad reaction to a medication adjustment. He'd been nauseous and miserable. "I understand, Captain," Clara said. "Sometimes the fuel converters are faulty. We'll try a different energy source later. For now, we will maintain a stationary orbit. We will observe the gas giants outside the viewport." A long silence followed. I had mistaken it for laziness, for neglect. But now I understood. They weren't just sitting there. They were waiting for a wave of nausea to pass, waiting for the pain in his small body to subside. Clara hadn't pushed him to eat. She had turned his inability to stomach food into a part of their grand cosmic mission. She had protected his dignity, his sense of control, when his own body was betraying him. My throat felt tight. I scrolled and clicked, frantically opening file after file. A day they'd spent almost entirely in the living room with the blinds drawn became entering a dark nebula to avoid detection by hostile forces. A day when Leo was too sore to walk to the park was logged as a day when the ship's landing gear was damaged, requiring the crew to stay aboard and run diagnostics, which consisted of watching nature documentaries on TV. Every single thing I had condemned her for, every moment of perceived idleness, was a carefully crafted illusion. It was a masterpiece of compassionate care, designed to give my grieving, sick little boy a sense of power and adventure in a life that was often small, painful, and frightening. She wasn't just his nanny. She was his first officer, his co-pilot. She had built him a universe inside the four walls of our silent, lonely house, a universe where his weakness was his mission, and his fatigue was a strategic retreat. And I had fired her. I had called this woman, this creative, empathetic angel, lazy, incompetent. I had accused her of taking advantage of me. The shame was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. Her final words to me echoed in my head, no longer a cryptic jab, but a desperate plea. He needs you to see him. She wasn't talking about my parenting. She was trying to tell me that the boy I saw on the camera feed wasn't the whole picture. I was looking, but I wasn't seeing. I saw a lazy nanny and a quiet kid. She saw a starship captain and his trusted commander navigating a treacherous galaxy together. I had to fix this. I had to call her, apologize, beg her to come back. I fumbled for my phone, my vision blurred with tears. I scrolled to her contact, but my thumb hovered over the call button. What could I even say? How do you apologize for an error in judgment so vast, so fundamentally wrong? My gaze fell back to the tablet. I needed to understand everything before I called. As I navigated back out of the Starship Logs folder, my finger slipped and I swiped to a different screen. And there, I saw another folder. It was hidden away, not as obvious as the first one. It was simply titled Notes. My heart hammered against my ribs. I tapped it open. Inside were more audio files, but these had different names. Dr. Miller's visit. Medication schedule. Sarah's recipes. Sarah? My late wife? Why would Clara have a file with my wife's name on it? They had never met. Sarah was gone months before I even started looking for a nanny. I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. My fingers shook as I pressed on the file named Sarah's recipes. It wasn't a list of ingredients. It was a recording. A voice filled the room. A voice I hadn't heard in a year. A voice that was etched into the very core of my soul. It was Sarah. "Okay, Clara," my dead wife's voice said, sounding cheerful but tired, the way she always did after a long day. "So for the shepherd's pie, the trick is a little bit of rosemary in the potatoes. Leo loves it. And if he's having a bad stomach day, you can't go wrong with simple toast with the crusts cut off. He calls them energy squares. He'll tell you they're for his spaceship." The tablet fell from my hands and clattered onto the hardwood floor. I didn't register the sound. All I could hear was Sarah's voice, a ghost in the machine, calmly explaining the secret to her shepherd's pie. It couldn't be. It was impossible. I snatched the tablet back up, my mind racing, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe it was an old recording, something Leo had saved. But she said Clara's name. "Okay, Clara." I scrambled through the notes folder. There were dozens of recordings. I clicked on one labeled Bad Dream Protocol. Sarah's voice again, softer this time, filled with a mother's gentle wisdom. "If he wakes up from the nightmare about the shadow monster," she said, "the first thing you do is turn on his galaxy projector. Tell him the ship's sensors have detected an anomaly, but the shields are holding. Then you make him warm milk. He calls it nebula nectar. It has to be in his blue mug, the one with the planet on it. That's very important. It's the only mug certified for deep space travel. Every detail was something I thought only I knew. The shadow monster. The nebula nectar. The ridiculous, sacred importance of the blue mug. These were the intimate rituals of our little family. The secret codes Sarah and I had developed to help Leo navigate his fears and his illness. And here was Clara, a woman I had hired from an agency, being tutored in these secrets by my dead wife. My grief, always simmering just below the surface, crashed over me in a tidal wave. Hearing her voice, so alive, so her, was both a beautiful gift and an agonizing torture. But beneath the grief was a profound, earth-shattering confusion. How? When? Sarah had been gone for a year. I had hired Clara 6 months ago. The timelines didn't just not match, they were on different planets. I had to know more. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control my fingers, but I found another file. Introduction for Clara. I pressed play. "Hi, Clara," Sarah's voice began, and I could hear the strain in it, the forced cheerfulness that meant she was in pain but trying to hide it. "If you're hearing this, well, it means I'm not there anymore. And that just sucks. for lack of a better word. She took a shaky breath. My husband, Mark. He's a wonderful man. He's brilliant and kind, but he's going to be so lost. He throws himself into his work when he's overwhelmed, and he's about to be more overwhelmed than he's ever been in his life. And my son, my sweet Leo, he's my whole world. His condition, it's not just about the medicine, it's about the stories. It's about keeping the magic alive for him when things get scary. He needs his co-pilot. Tears were streaming down my face now, dripping onto the screen. She had known. She had known she was dying, and while I was burying my head in the sand, clinging to false hope from doctors, she was planning. She was preparing for a future she wouldn't be in. The recording continued. I found your profile through a private nursing group. They said you were the best, not just for your skills, but for your heart. I know it's a crazy thing to ask, to basically apply for a job with a ghost, but I need you. Leo needs you. Mark will hire a nanny, eventually. I need you to be that nanny. He won't know that I arranged it. It has to be this way. He'd never agree to it beforehand. He's too proud. Please, watch over my boys for me. It all clicked into place. The impeccable references. The strange calm she had during the interview. Her cryptic parting words. She wasn't just a nanny I hired. She was a promise my wife had made. Sarah, in her infinite heartbreaking foresight, had handpicked her successor. She had found a guardian for our son and left behind an instruction manual on how to love him, how to speak his language, how to navigate the cosmos she had created for him. And I, in my blind arrogance, had destroyed it all. I hadn't just fired an employee. I had dismissed Sarah's last wish. I had cast out the person she had entrusted with the most precious thing in her life. The shame I'd felt before was nothing compared to this. This was a deep, soul-level failure. I had to get her back. It wasn't a question of wanting to anymore. It was a sacred duty. I grabbed my phone, my fingers finally steady with a desperate sense of purpose. I dialed her number and held my breath. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, it went to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Clara. I can't come to the phone right now. Please leave a message. My heart sank. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. She was blocking my calls. Of course she was. Why would she want to talk to the man who had so coldly and cruelly misjudged her? Panic began to set in. I didn't just have her phone number, I had her address from her employment file. I couldn't wait. I couldn't leave a message. I had to see her, to explain in person. I told Leo I had to run a quick, urgent errand and set him up on the couch, my mind a chaotic whirl. I drove faster than I should have, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Her address led me to a modest, quiet apartment complex on the other side of town. I found her unit, number 2B, and ran up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. I stood in front of her door, my chest heaving, my apology rehearsed in my mind. I raised my hand to knock, but before my knuckles could touch the wood, the door swung open. A young woman, maybe in her early 30s, with Clara's kind eyes but a face etched with worry, stood there. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice wary. I'm Mark Davies," I stammered. "I'm here to see Clara. It's incredibly important." The woman's expression hardened instantly, a flicker of recognition, followed by a wave of cold fury. "You," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here. Please," I begged, my professional composure completely gone. "I made a terrible mistake. I need to talk to her. I need to apologize." The woman laughed, a short, bitter sound. "An apology? It's a little late for that, Mr. Davies." She stepped back from the doorway, revealing the apartment behind her. "You should have thought of that before you caused this." My eyes followed her gesture, and my blood ran cold. The living room was sparse, but what I saw made my knees weak. In the center of the room, surrounded by medical equipment, I recognized all too well: an oxygen concentrator, an IV stand, a heart monitor beeping a slow, steady rhythm, lay Clara. She was in a hospital bed, her face pale and drawn, an oxygen cannula in her nose, and sitting on a stool beside her, holding her frail hand, was my son's cardiologist, Dr. Miller. The world tilted on its axis. Dr. Miller looked up, his expression a mixture of surprise and grim professionalism. He gave me a curt nod, the kind a doctor gives when they're delivering bad news. The young woman, who I now realize must be Clara's daughter, stepped aside, her arms crossed, her eyes still blazing with an anger I wholly deserved. "Mark," Dr. Miller said, his voice low and even, "what are you doing here?" I don't understand," I whispered, my gaze fixed on Clara. She looked so fragile, so much smaller than I remembered. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. The serene calm I had mistaken for laziness was the quiet grace of someone conserving every ounce of their precious, dwindling energy. "This is my mother's patient," the young woman said, her voice sharp. "Dr. Miller isn't your son's doctor. He's hers." The pieces of the puzzle, the ones I hadn't even known were missing, slammed into place with brutal clarity. Clara hadn't just found Dr. Miller through some professional network. They had a history, a long one. Dr. Miller stood up and walked me towards the small kitchenette, giving us a semblance of privacy. "Clara has the same condition as Leo," he explained softly. "Viral cardiomyopathy, only she's had it for 20 years. She was one of my first patients when I was a resident. She's in end-stage heart failure, Mark. She's been on the transplant list for 3 years. Every word was a punch to the gut, the naps on the couch, the quiet days. The times she sat still, simply observing the gas giants outside the viewport. It wasn't just a game for Leo. It was her reality too. She was a starship commander whose own life support was failing. "She met your wife at a support group," Dr. Miller continued, his eyes full of a sad understanding. "They became close. When Sarah found out her own prognosis was poor, she became obsessed with finding a way to care for Leo after she was gone. She knew you'd be drowning. She knew Leo needed someone who truly, fundamentally understood his world, his limitations, someone who spoke his language. So, she asked Clara." "Asked her?" I choked out. She's this sick. She shouldn't have been working at all." "She shouldn't have been," he agreed. I advised against it. Her daughter begged her not to. But Clara, she said she had made a promise to a friend. She said she had one last mission. The stress of the job, especially the emotional stress of your phone call yesterday. It put too much strain on her heart. She had a major event last night. The weight of my actions was suffocating. I hadn't just misjudged her. I had actively harmed her. My selfish, blind anger had put the woman my wife had chosen to protect our son in a hospital bed in her own living room. I walked back over to her bedside, past her daughter, who didn't try to stop me this time. I knelt down, my expensive suit wrinkling on the worn linoleum. "Clara," I whispered, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I am so, so sorry." Her eyelids fluttered open. Her eyes, still so kind, found mine. A faint, tired smile touched her lips. "Hello, Mr. Davies," she rasped, her voice barely audible over the hum of the oxygen machine. "Mark," I corrected her, my voice breaking. "Please, call me Mark." I took her hand. It felt impossibly frail. "I know everything. I found Sarah's recordings. There are no words to tell you how wrong I was. What you did for Leo, for me, it was the most beautiful, selfless thing I have ever seen. You honored my wife's memory in a way I failed to. You kept her magic alive." A single tear rolled down her cheek. "He's a good captain," she whispered. "A brave boy." "He is," I agreed, "because he had the best commander in the fleet. We stayed like that for a long time. Eventually, Dr. Miller had to leave for his rounds, and Clara's daughter, whose name I learned was Emily, made a pot of coffee. The anger had faded from her face, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. We sat in the small kitchen, and she told me about her mother, about the woman who raised 3 children on her own, who loved science fiction, and who believed that the best way to fight a monster was to turn it into a story. I went home that evening a different man. The first thing I did was sit down with Leo. I didn't use metaphors or stories. I told him the truth. I told him Commander Clara was on a very important, very difficult mission of her own, and that her ship needed urgent repairs. I told him she was sick, just like him, and that she had been so brave looking after him. He cried, and I held him, crying with him. For the first time since Sarah died, I felt like I was truly seeing my son. not just managing his illness. The next day, I made some calls. I have a successful company. I have resources. I have connections. I spent the day pulling every string I had, calling in favors, speaking to hospital administrators and top surgeons. I wasn't going to let Clara's story end this way. 3 weeks later, Emily called me, her voice choked with emotion. They'd found a perfect match. I took Leo to visit her a month after the surgery. She was still pale, but her eyes were bright, and the ever-present oxygen cannula was gone. She was sitting in a comfortable armchair, a blanket over her lap. Leo, shy at first, walked over and handed her a drawing he'd made. It was of 2 stick figures in a spaceship, one large and one small, looking out a window at a swirl of colorful planets. "The ship is fixed, Commander," Leo said softly. Clara took the drawing with a trembling hand and smiled, a real, radiant smile. "That it is, Captain," she said, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "That it is. Clara never came back to work for me, of course. She needed to rest and recover. But she became something more important. She became our family. We have dinner together every Sunday. Emily comes too. We talk and laugh, and sometimes, when Leo gets tired, he and Clara will sit quietly together, and I know they're off exploring some distant galaxy. I still look at the security cameras sometimes, but I see things differently now. I don't see idleness. I see patience. I don't see laziness. I see love. Sarah knew I'd be lost, and she left me a map. It just took me a while to learn how to read it. She sent us an angel, and I almost sent her away. But now she's here to stay, a constant, gentle reminder that the most important missions are the ones you can't always see. You just have to have faith in your co-pilot.